So at this point, we should have a kind of together works-cited page. I'm just going to pull up my noodle tools one. We've collected sources. If there's anything that I can point out on source collection, and again, this is more for all of you at home. I'll freak them out. We want to make sure that we have sources balanced, that you have stuff to talk about all the parts of your paper. And today's going to help to make sure we have that balance to what we have done. And if we don't, well, we'll have to go find some more sources. So we've said, hey, push them out and export them. So we should have a working document that has all of our sources collected together. And as we move to outlining, we need to start by thinking about, all right, we've now done our research. How am I going to answer the questions in the prompt? And so we need to go back to the original assignment piece. Each prompt had a number of parts to it. And we've talked about prompt deconstruction in the past with AP essay pieces. When we actually look at release tests, we do want to consider something similar here because there is a lot of stuff we need to address as part of our essay, regardless of which topic. So my suggestion really simply is to pull apart and deconstruct the prompt for yourself and give yourself a chance to answer each of the questions within the prompt based on your research. And that's what's key. When we wrote our proposal, we were writing the proposal with the idea of, hey, no research behind me. What do I think? Some of you may have found your thoughts didn't match the research you were finding. So as we're now looking, we may want to change our answers to these questions. So before we get to a definite thesis and a formulation of an argument, we now want to reevaluate. How would we answer the parts of the prompt? So notice here, all I did, open a Google Doc, copied it over, and pulled it apart for each piece. This would give you the chance to answer that and then move from there to formulating a 1 to 2 sentence thesis statement. How are you going to answer this question in your essay? And it's going to help us to start to formulate what that argument is. It's important that we have that before we start to outline. Because when we get to doing an outline, here we go. Pulled up some example pages and some things. We've seen outlines before in the past. We've seen them that use letters, numbers, Roman numerals, lots of things. But in order to build that outline, you kind of have to know what your answer to the question is and how you're going to support it. What are those major pieces of support? What are those minor pieces of support? What's the evidence you're going to pull in? And so if you look, I linked to 2 different college pages that both have a video attached to the page as well as examples of how to outline, how to get your thoughts together, how to kind of keep track of your evidence and do pieces like that. I intentionally didn't give you a definite template for this outline because I need it to be useful for you. It's sort of like note-taking, and we've talked about Cornell notes. Cornell notes work really well for some people, not for me, but for some people. But if I come in blazing and I'm like, everybody's doing it, it becomes a task you have to complete rather than something that is useful to help you. So when we're looking at doing this outline, we need it to be useful to you. I'm going to make a suggestion to help to make it useful to you. Our goal in creating the outline isn't just to get your thoughts together and to lay them out in a linear way, but it's also to consolidate our research. Right now, you have a works cited page that probably looks like this one. This one. There we go. So you've got lots of sources here, and then you've got lots of documents kind of everywhere. I bet you have stuff that you've pulled from Gale in your Google Drive. You have links to different web pages that you read. You might have written down some things in a Google Doc or handwritten them. So what you have is stuff everywhere. We want to consolidate so that going forward, the only thing you need is your outline. So we're pulling the evidence and quotes that we might need out of our documents and putting them on the outline. What we want to make sure we do in that process of consolidation is not lose track of where the information came from. So take, for example, I don't know. Let's take this source. Why not? Maybe I got some quotes on my outline that come from this source particularly, but I don't want to lose track of how this works. Well, how many of you like to work with colors? I can color code my sources on my works cited right now. And then on my outline, every time I use a quote from that source, I just highlight it yellow. That helps to keep it straight for me of, okay, now I can see which source goes with what information. Some of you may absolutely hate colors and you hate documents that are all different colors because your eyes just go bleh in all different directions. Great. Number your sources. And maybe after you do that, put a number. Maybe you need to be more formal. Great. Figure out what your works cited citation would look like for each source and literally put the citation on your outline after each quote or each fact. The biggest thing here is, again, what works for you. And what we don't want to do is two things here in this process as we go forward. Number one, biggest mistake that I see students make is they don't consolidate their research well, and they don't spend the time on the outline. And so what they will do over the next few days as we start to draft is write a sentence and then go digging back through their files, looking for some document. And they'll spend 15 minutes looking for a quote they thought they read. And when they finally find it and they get it in, they've only added one sentence in that 15 minutes, and then they go back to looking. And they end up getting super frustrated because they don't feel like they're making good progress. Well, if every time you have to keep digging through that pile to find what you want, you're not going to make good progress. Spend the time today to dig through. Thing two that frustrates students to no end is they don't stay organized in this process. They don't listen to some of the tips. They create their outline, but they haven't kept track of their sources. So when it gets to drafting, they start writing and they go, I don't remember where this came from. I'll figure it out later. And they just keep going. And then they end up turning in a paper that they have unintentionally plagiarized. They never bothered to track that source back. They never bothered to put their citation in. Boom, gotcha. So make sure that we create a way to stay organized through this process. Again, to help with that, there are a couple of links that we have here on today's page. But also, don't be afraid to just Google and hit the image button. All I did was put in research paper outlines and look at all the different templates that I got. You might see something here that you go, oh, that's what he's talking about. Honestly, don't make this any more complicated than it has to be. Now, the big reminder for today, especially for some of you that turn in like 8-page essays, I know you're not spending 45 minutes on it. And if you think I'm kidding, seriously, some of these people online, oh my God, I feel so bad for them because I'm like, you're making your life so difficult. Look at these. Is there a ton of information on this outline? No, I don't want you to write a book. We're not writing a paper. Not yet. All we're doing is outlining our ideas. So don't feel like it needs to be super nitpicky in this. It is something that is useful to you. And more than anything, the biggest use that you will get out of this outline is creating your own line of reasoning. How are you going to back up this argument? What's the evidence you're going to use from your research to do it? Figuring out how that fits. Now, just because you build an outline today, are you definitely shackled to that structure to write your paper? No, you're not. We're just getting your ideas isolated and started and fixed. The writing process allows us to move stuff around and do as we need to. But we want to get that start towards how are we going to get this together? And I think some people are getting frustrated, especially online, because they're not taking the time to look back at the prompt like we did and revisit what's the purpose of this paper. what do we need to cover? So as a reminder, you got two legs to your argument. Leg one is Gatsby. Leg two is right here. So think about the one-legged man in the butt kicking contest. Some of you, when I looked at your outline, your sources, you got a ton of sources for Gatsby, but you got nothing for anything else. So right now, you're the one-legged man in the butt kicking contest. I don't care how high you're going to jump. You're going to have to pick yourself up off the ground every time you try to kick somebody. Wait, you've never seen that?
No,
Just let that visual work for you.
No, please.
Anyway, no laughs, no nothing. Tough crowd today. So we want to make sure we have a diversified bit, and that's how this outline can help. If you're building in a whole section and you're going, oh, dang, I don't have anything to say here for my research. Yeah, you're going to have to go find something else. Sorry. Questions? Okay, without the